Hello everyone, this is step 11 of our headstand journey. And so today I'm going to talk about different entries. So I talked already about the splits entry, which is something that a beginner shouldn't do. It's something that is fun to practice, and it's going to be a lot easier if you're quite flexible and if you already have the strength to lift that way. So you can try different shapes of legs and stuff like that with it, but I would highly recommend that really you go from the step one, you start with your tucked position. It will build up a lot more strength in the core than the splits one. So in progression, we have straddle entry, straddle press, and then piking press. So pike is really quite difficult. So we'll talk about that next step 12, and after step 12 basically you know everything, right? Doesn't mean you can do everything, but you know everything and you have all the basics for really a very good practice of your headstands. And you should by that time really feel confident. You should by this now already feel quite confident in your headstand. So straddle is something that is going to be easy for some people and really difficult for others, depending on your hip mobility and your hip flexibility, because you basically have to enter a straddle position with, you can straddle from legs together and then straddle around, which is even harder, but you can enter it with your legs apart. So you're standing with your legs wide and you're taking your head to the floor and walking your feet, and eventually as your hips get over your shoulders, you will be able to lift your legs up. But for that, obviously, you need to have a good flexibility in your forward fold. If you enter a straddle and you don't have the flexibility to basically do this kind of thing, take your head to the floor and have a straight back. So if you're rounding your back, I'm going to try to round my back as much as I can, because I can't. I'm a straight back kind of person. So you would have your back rounded, and it's not going to work because you're not going to be in a good position for your neck. So you really want, when you enter your straddle, you want to be with your torso and your back completely straight, and taking your hips above your shoulders. So obviously for that, what you need to work on is your Upavishta Konasana. So this is the one where you want to work on going forward, but not with a rounded back, and really correct that. And to correct that, the best way to correct this is to film yourself and to watch yourself. Because how many times have I said, press the chest open, straight back forward, and people are still here. So this is not something that you can feel so much if you're not very body aware. So watch yourself and see. And basically, if you're starting to go forward with this kind of back, or if you start in the right way, but then as you start going down, you round your neck and you round your back, you've lost that. You need to really press open and try to get the chin to the floor, even if you're rounding the back a little bit to get your chin to the floor, yeah. But I'm pressing my chest down. So whether you go without the hands or the hands on the floor is fine, yeah. If you go without the hands, that builds strength as well. So there's that one. There's Upavishta Konasana, or obviously there is Prasarita, and this is how I would start. There's this Prasarita Padottanasana, which is this one. And you go forward and you try, so the A variation is to have your hands between your feet and press your elbows back so you can take your head to the floor and you've got a straight back. So again, if I do this from this position, I would have my hands here. So you start from here and press hips back, shoulders back, yeah, don't round, flat back, and then you bend your elbows. And so what I get my students to do is basically, once you're in this position, watch it, not pushing, but opening the chest. And if you can get your elbows to the floor, that's already a good step. But you don't want to send your hips back. You want to send your hips forward, hips level with your feet. Right, so that's one good one to practice, because this is going to be most probably the entry you're going to have to be in when you start pressing up. And before being able to press up, I would highly recommend that you come down. So I showed it in one of the videos, I think it was step 9, yeah, where I showed when you start working with moving the legs around, I did a straddle and I came down. And so that's what you want to work. You want to work on the negative movement. So before being able to press up into straddle, you're going to have to come down into your straddle and down it to the point where you're not falling, but you press, and very gently you land. So that gives you something like that. I'm sorry, I'm having to go to this again. I've got a very small room. So I'm going to try with tripod first, because one more thing, you will learn that when you press up in tripod, it's easier than when you press up. I mean, it was for me, and it's a lot easier for a lot of people. That's why I'm mentioning it. Then when you press up from a supported headstand, okay? So this is what I'm going to show you in tripod, and practice that. And then you also want to see when you set up. So I'm going to set up very close to the wall so that I can show. And in a way also it gives me also the distance on my mat, because my mat is positioned this way, where I need to have my feet before I can straddle back up. Yeah, where I have the strength. Because if I position my feet in a different place, then maybe it won't work. Okay, so that's something to try. Anyway, until you get very proficient in it, and then you can try and you'll feel it. Yeah. So I'm going up in tripod. So I'm going up this way, up, pressing up, and going up. So keep pressing your elbows in, open feet, and find your straddle position. Oops, I'm a little close to the wall. Find straddle, 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 and then you start lowering the feet, and then you start really squeezing your belly so that basically you hover and then hop, you land. And here you can see where your feet have to be to be able to straddle back up. And so if I straddle back up, I lift, hop, squeeze my belly, and then almost immediately I can lift my feet, press, and come back up. All right, so that was my knee. I don't know, I hope he didn't like it. It didn't hurt. So, right, so that's it for your straddle. I would say practice coming down, practice coming down, practice coming down. And if you lose the way down, you're probably not ready to lift up. Because if you lose the way down, to get to that position where you have to lift, you're probably going to have a little bit of a kick, of a jump. And we don't want that in headstand. In the other inversions, you can, but in headstands, you don't want to. So try that first. Same thing for your supported headstand. So if we go now to supported headstand, up, oh sorry, I'm going to my supported headstand this way, lifting up and losing it because I don't press enough. Right, so from here, you just straddle, 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 and again I'm a little close to the wall, and I'm going, whoo. And I also, you're estimating what you've got to do, the amount of work, compression here in the belly before you land. And again, that gives you a good distance of your feet and a good distance of where your feet are going to land and where you have to be to straddle back up. And then eventually, you want to practice this, obviously, away from a wall. And you're going to set up in your Prasarita Padottanasana. Yeah? And so, yeah, so you could enter it from straight leg and then straddle up. But as you could see also, you have to have a good amplitude with your hips. Because the more the hips are open, the more you're in a kind of single plane-ish. Yeah? And it's easier to, core-wise, it's easier to lower down and then pack up because you don't have the weight so far in front of you, which makes piking so difficult. So when you straddle, you're trying to open as wide as possible to squeeze, 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 and land kind of like in one. Did you see how my feet are here and my head is against the wall? So we're talking about this kind of amplitude, but my hips are open. So if your hips are not that open, and if you have to do a straddle this way, you realize that your head will be here. Maybe you'll have to land your feet here, but you'll have more weight to negotiate as you come down, and obviously as you lift. And as you lift, you also, and also maybe you won't have you wouldn't be able to do it and take your hips over your shoulders. I'm trying to think about that one, because I've never really seen it done other than Prasarita Padottanasana, taking your elbows to the floor and starting to lift. So in Prasarita Padottanasana, we're supposed to have 4 feet between the feet. So that's already, you know, we're talking about this kind of thing, about, 4 feet. So you already have to be able to get into that position, and fairly close to your feet, so that can eventually you move yourself slightly forward, press. I'm not gonna go all the way up because you won't see my legs, but basically I'm here, right? And then I would lift up. And you will feel that if you've got the flexibility, and by this moment you should have the strength in your core, the legs are going to lift fairly quickly just on their own. Try it and see what happens. All right, hope you enjoyed that. Tomorrow is piking, or next step is piking. That's a lot harder. See ya.